Ain't it wonderful to begin the day divinely charged and ready to grow? It is my joy to be here to experience that with all of you. And this month, we're approaching our Sunday talks in a different way. Each week, one of you gets to draw a random card from the Virtues deck, and the following week's sermon is based on the card which was drawn. The Virtues deck is a deck of cards that we get from the virtuesproject.org. That is the program that we base our chapels at Barnhart on. And it's what we get the most questions about from parents and congregants alike. So what better way to explain what we do than to demonstrate it, right? Because we get these little cards. And yeah, stuff is on the surface, but see, it's my job to dig deeper. So you are getting a grown-up sized bite of what digging deeper looks like. Now, the first week, you drew the card for caring. And last week was a tough one. It was assertiveness. And it was a tough one. But this week, this is one that we'd all do really well to get it cemented into our minds. And that is reliability. And I'm not talking about the everyday approach to the idea of reliability, always being dependable, doing what you say you're going to do, being where you say you will be, that kind of thing. No, we're going to dig deeper, but before we do, let's look at what the card says. So reliability, according to this, means that others can depend on you. You keep your commitments and give your best to every job. You are responsible, you don't forget, and you don't need to be reminded. Ooh, ouch, I didn't see that one there. You don't forget, and you don't need to be reminded, I say in front of my external hard drives in the front row. I need to work on reliability a little bit, don't I? It says other people can relax knowing things are in your reliable hands with the help of your external hard drives. Says you are practicing reliability when you make promises you can keep, when you really care about doing what you promise, when you return things you borrow, when you plan ahead, when you do your best and finish on time, and when you find another way if obstacles occur. And there's always affirmations, and I generally don't like them too much, even with the kids, because they miss the bigger chunk of things, right? I'm reliable. I keep my promises. Others can depend on me. Nothing can stop me from giving my best. All of those are great, but not one of them is really uplifting, is it? Okay, so after reading that, we have a reasonable idea of what it looks like and sounds like to carry yourself in a way which lets others know that we're reliable, right? And we kind of already knew a lot of that anyway. But let's look beneath the surface. And on the surface, and over the surface. Let's look at the big picture, and I mean the ultimate picture, that absolute, inarguable, infallible, omnipotent allness of reliability, because the only truly reliable force in the universe is the universe. It's God. God is all, through all, as all, and we can always rely on that. And by the end of this talk, we're going to have the big reveal. But before we jump ahead of Vanna White and give away the grand prize, please tell me you all know who she is. Because I typed that in and I realized some folks may not remember. I think we have everybody here is hovering around my age group. So we remember Vanna, right? Okay, cool. So before we look behind Vanna's curtain to see the big deal waiting for us, we've got some unpacking to do. In Jeremiah chapter 32, verse 17, it says, "Ah, sovereign Lord, you have made the heavens and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. Nothing is too hard for you." And from The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes on page 36, the original life is infinite. It is good. It is filled with peace. It is of the essence of purity. It is the ultimate of intelligence. It is power. It is law. It is life. It is in us. In that inner sanctuary of our own nature, hidden, perhaps from objective gaze, nestles the seed, perfection. And then from verse 4 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao-Tzu said, "The Tao is so vast that when you use it, something is always left." How deep it is. It seems to be the ancestor of myriad things. It blunts sharpness, untangles knots, softens the glare, unifies with the mundane. It is so full, it seems to have a remainder. It is the child of I don't know who, and prior to the primeval Lord on high. So, those were quotes from 3 different faith backgrounds, right? It was the Hebrew and Old Testament of the Christian Bible, Lao-Tzu's Tao Te Ching, and the Science of Mind. And I chose to use them to illustrate a point. Although they are from 3 completely different faiths, when combined, they make one complete, cohesive truth. The Bible verse marvels in the limitless power of God, observing that all came from God and nothing is impossible to God. Ernest Holmes follows that thought by indicating that God is also within us. At our very heart lies the seed of perfection. And here's the coolest bit. Lao-Tzu wrote the concluding thought centuries before the text which came to be known as the Bible were a thing. He summed it up by saying that we can use the power that is the Tao, which is God, that it is so limitless that it can do all things, yet still be inexhaustible. So God is the all-powerful. God is within us, and we can use God's power without limit. Now, I could have drawn that whole faith map from all kinds of other sources, or I could have done it with just the Bible, or just the Science of Mind, or just about any other spiritual text. But I chose to use those 3 distinctly different examples to illustrate the point that what I am telling you has been said by spiritual leaders since the dawn of time. Every religious text I know of says exactly what I'm saying in different ways, and yet, how many of us have been told the truth as plainly and directly as you're hearing it here? How many of us have been left to decipher line and verse to find the greatest truths and have been unable to decode the mystery so clearly? I wager that a great many, if not the majority of us, have never heard how simple and clear it is, and I have to wonder at that. You see, I'm no great theologian. I'm just an ordinary human being with a lot of questions and a lot of books. And I let those books inspire more questions, and I'm going to keep asking them until the well runs dry, if such a thing could ever happen. So if my curious brain can connect those dots from one faith to another, why hasn't the collective human consciousness of our planet found the same answers? Here's the answer. They have. They have found the same answers, and they've told this truth and told it and told it, yet listening ears have turned away. Why? Because believing it. Believing that the God in heaven and the God within are the same God, and that we can use that God power within to create whatever we wish to experience, that means that we have to take responsibility for the conditions in our lives and in our world. And that is a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? If one is coming from a standpoint of fear or lack or hurt or guilt or shame, if one is coming from a place that's uncomfortable, it's easier to beg an external God for intervention or comfort or peace than it is to recognize that we individually and collectively are the medium through which God's intervention and comfort and peace and joy and bounty and fulfillment come to be. So you don't like where you are in your life right now? It may be tough. It may be tougher to see it and even harder to believe it, but you put yourself there. You asked for it, and God delivered. And here is that big reveal that I promised. The single most important truth I can offer you is that God will always seek to deliver exactly what you ask for. That is the most reliable, unchanging principle I know of. You ask, and the universe will reliably deliver. Maybe that's where Amazon Prime got their business model from, right? But I want you to consider exactly what that means. I mean, you're going along and you're minding your business and finding yourself in uncomfortable places. Things don't seem to fit quite right. Maybe everything seems to be a huge mess and you can't see how you possibly could have created something like that. I know that it can be hard to see how you created a storm when you feel like you're just getting struck with bolt after bolt of lightning, but it's true. That storm may be exactly what you need to get through to a better place that you've been yearning for. Or it may be caused by some area in your thought which needs tweaking, which needs some adjustment. For example, I pulled this excerpt from the book that I shared with you a few months ago, Your Aladdin's Lamp by Harlan Ware and Bill Hornaday. On page 205, it says, in the past 75 years, thousands of metaphysical healings have been reported, enough to invite investigation on the part of reasonable people who have bounced around long enough to decide that there's gotta be a better way. But the study calls for dedication and patience and an open mind to maintain an affirmative attitude against the assault of the negative daily headlines and news announcements, the impact of heedless and antagonistic personalities, the daily waking nightmare of an indifferent and unbelieving world is anything but easy. But learning how to translate the fevered scene into a longer view is magnificently rewarding. In the silence of your own consciousness, alone with the great reality, Ernest said in lecture, and he's referring to Ernest Holmes. He said, see whether you have true love and forgiveness and more conviction to bring to bear, not to influence the law, but to be operated on by the law with a mathematical and mechanical certainty at the level of your conviction. The words true love and forgiveness often occurred in these healing lectures, and we're beginning to understand how compassion and forgiveness heal. One Wednesday evening last spring in Founders Church, that is the church in LA, during the weekly study session, which is called the Meeting of 1,600 Friends. Pause. The meeting of 1,600 friends. That's us. Let me just say, a startling incident occurred. We believe that there is a healing consciousness of great power present in that sanctuary when large numbers of people meet for meditation and study. There's that same presence when 1 or 2 people meet in here. So we're just dialing it way up. It says sometimes we see immediate results, and we did that night. In a talk on forgiveness, I, Bill Hornaday, ad-libbed a passage which, when reviewed later, seemed in no way remarkable. Do not hold resentment, I said in effect, or bitterness. For your own sake, if for no other, love and forgive. And somewhere back in the sanctuary, a woman sobbed. Those close to her were aware of hushed whispers and a stirring as I went on with my discourse. And later, when saying goodnight to the 1,600 friends in the foyer, an elderly woman pushed her way eagerly toward me through the throng. "Dr. Hornaday!" She held her right hand above her head, opening and closing her fingers. "I want you to know I've been healed. My first visit here, and I've been healed." Her face was wet with tears, the glow of excitement unmistakably genuine. She'd never read a metaphysical book in her life and had come to the meeting only because she was desperate. A friend had insisted that joining a study group certainly couldn't do her any harm. During her years of suffering, diagnosed as a painful form of arthritis, the fingers of her right hand had gradually closed into a fist. Whatever was said about forgiveness stirred a darkened corner of her mind, and she realized with elation that she actually had forgiven someone for an injury over which she had brooded bitterly in early years. This now is a new moment. The past is forever gone, I had said. A tingling startled her. She found her heart lifting in sudden warmth, accompanied by an already believing awareness, not of being gradually healed, but of having been healed in an instant just past. Her fingers unlocked slightly. She began to direct them to open. And all the while she was congratulating herself in having so long ago forgiven. She carried with her only a faint memory of that old resentment. And in recognizing this, had she freed herself from self-inflicted pain? I do not know. Doctors wouldn't know. Psychiatrists wouldn't know. All would have opinions. Not even the person healed would know what actually had happened. Only she would know with certainty that whereas she had been desperate, now she was healed. She told me about it over coffee, which is served after the lecture, a lot like us. She had lost faith in religion years ago, she said, and now added wistfully, "I wish someone would tell me how to imagine God." So that woman suffered debilitating pain and loss of mobility due to a thought, a lack of forgiveness. Did she say, "I don't want to forgive you, so I'm going to choose to endure physical pain and disfigurement just so I can hold on to my resentment"? No, most definitely not, at least not consciously. But that is exactly how that resentment manifested in her life. When she chose to keep that resentment intact, when she chose to hold on to her hurt, she told the universe that she liked hurting, that she wanted to suffer. And God's invisible Amazon van delivered exactly that. Now, here is where many a debate has begun in our Science of Mind study group. Does that story mean that every physical ailment is a manifestation of some deep-seated ickiness we're holding on to, some thought? Some would say yes. Yes. Others, bingo, others would scoff at the faintest idea of such a thing. I, as you know, stand squarely on the fence. Sometimes I lean to one side or the other as I encounter situations along the way. I believe that although some physical manifestations are direct metaphysical or physical expressions of limiting thought, other physical symptoms unrelated to our limiting thought can be a catalyst to propel us into a vastly changed and better experience. So the illness you are dealing with may not be your thought. It may be the very thing that gets you where you're going. And I also believe that the vastly changed and better experience has almost definitely been offered to us time and time again, but we've willfully ignored it until God had to force the issue. In the words of my darling friend Jean Grabowski out there, God smacked me over the head with an 8x8. I ignored the yardstick, the 1x1, the 2x4, the 4x4, so I got an 8x8. Good thing I didn't have to get hit with a telephone pole to get it. And that reminded me of a joke. It's a joke that isn't really a joke when you stop to think about it. The priest at a church in Louisiana, when Hurricane Hillary paid her visit, adamantly refused to leave when evacuation orders were given. God will protect me, said Father Gabriel. You go on without me. And as the minutes ticked by and the water levels began to rise, local authorities came by to urge him a bit more strongly to get out of there. Still, he insisted, God will rescue me. Turn your efforts to those in need of your assistance. Then he bent to roll up his pant legs a little further so they wouldn't get wet. Some hours later, when the water had grown higher than he could comfortably stand in, a boat came by, pleading with him to get in. God will save me, my children. Go and help others. God shall provide. Now, the water had reached the rooftops, and the good father stood on the parapet below the steeple as a helicopter appeared above, and a voice from a loudspeaker announced that they're sending down a ladder so he could climb up to safety. And as the ladder came down, he waved it away. Go retrieve others in need. God will save me. Not long after that, Father Gabriel found himself sitting before God. My Father, he said, I did all you asked of me. I have always looked after those in need. I have been your humble and devoted servant. Why did you not save me? Came the reply, I sent you 2 evacuation orders and a boat and even a helicopter. And after the helicopter, the only option I had left was to give you wings. So here you are. You see, although Spirit will reliably deliver exactly what we ask for it, it is also constantly seeking to bring us to better and better places of wonder and adventure and celebration and learning. So, yes, if you suffer, you chose it. But is it an internal manifestation, or is it the slingshot you need to reach a higher place? In The Secret Hero by Rhonda Byrne, this is, I think, the second or the third of the trio of The Secret books. She writes on page 137, many people give up on their dreams or don't even begin to pursue them because from where they're standing, they can't see the whole path to their dream. You will never see the whole path ahead. And so you will never know how your dream is going to come true. No successful person has ever known how his or her dream would happen. They simply believed that it would and did not give up until it had. The path to your dreams is like being on a labyrinth. All you can see are the next few feet ahead of you. You can't see what's around the next turn until you go around it. And then you see the next few feet after that. And sometimes there are dead ends and you have to turn back. And sometimes there are shortcuts that you stumble upon as if by magic, which accelerate your passage. The path to your dreams unfolds in exactly the same way. Being in a labyrinth is the very adventure you wanted to have. You didn't want to see everything, know everything ahead, and be able to make your dreams come true with a snap of your fingers. You wanted the challenge of the journey because only through overcoming the challenges would you have the real happiness and fulfillment that every human being is searching for. When you're on the path to your dreams, a wall might suddenly appear, and you feel like you've hit a dead end and you're finished. But just like being in a labyrinth, no matter how things appear, there is always another path you can take. When you know that the success of your dream is at the center of the labyrinth, you will not be daunted by any unexpected twists and turns, because you will know that your success could be around the very next corner. And that's exactly how dreams come true. You see, it doesn't matter what your dream is. It could be something quite grand and detailed, or a thoughtfully comprehensive body of work. Or it could simply be finding your permanent place in the flow of good and comfort. Reaching in and touching that oneness of all things in such a way that it fully sustains and fulfills you. Whatever yours is, you're always on the path toward it. You experience what you choose on the journey. That is up to you, like it or not. And you can always rely on God to keep you moving along, no matter which road you take up the mountain or how many roads you choose to explore. They all lead to the top, even if there are 8x8s in your path. The mystics, Dr. Holmes told his audience at the Beverly one Sunday, described God as love, truth, beauty, and wisdom. Certainly God is in all four, he had said. The invisible presence in love, truth, beauty, and wisdom. Whatever is true is God, whether we can understand it or not. Whatever is beautiful and wise and loving is God. And I'm going to deviate for a moment from the book, although I'm going to pick it up in a sec, to tell you a bit about Ernest Holmes that you may not have known. Ernest was not fond of the term religion in connotation with what he taught. He disliked wearing a ministerial robe and was known to grumble and frown when churchy type stuff was required. As such, when the construction began for Founders Church, he would call it the edifice. Not the church. It was an opening in the ground at that point, and as he'd wander the build site, talking with and doing a great deal of listening to all of the workers throughout construction, one would only hear him call it thusly. The edifice. This is important to note because Ernest didn't think of what he taught as religion. He thought of it as revealing the means and ways of truth in the Christ consciousness of man. And back to the story. Okay, on page 209, when Emerson's heaven and earth for beams and rafters had been translated into small overhead circles of light in the graceful gray arch of the sanctuary, and the edifice had become a reality, he said, the only question we need to ask ourselves is this: do we, in our thought, attitude, the way we live, bear witness to the living truth that God is all there is? Do we, in this sanctuary and in our lives, hold to love, truth, beauty, and wisdom? Make that a policy. That's all the creed you'll ever need. Make it your policy. That creed, along with the knowledge that Spirit will eagerly, reliably, and unfailingly give you what you seek, affected with conscious attention to the thoughts and beliefs you hold, will deliver you into unparalleled bliss. Thank you.